We all salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, if I may, kindly ask people to remain standing, and those of you at home remain standing for a moment of silence this evening for our member, Ms. Chisholm's husband, Ed Chisholm, passed away recently. We want to have a moment of silence for Ed and Patty and their family for a moment of silence, and they remember Mr. Chisholm. Thank you. Thank you.
Call to order, Mr. Superintendent.
Ms. Chisholm, Ms. Cormier,
Yes.
Mr. Lipset,
Yes.
Mr. Kissel,
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan,
Present.
Dr. Wells,
Here.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes, present. Okay, we are all, 6 of us are here. Ms. Chisholm is absent. On behalf of the school committee, I want to extend my deepest condolences to the Chisholm family during this time. Approval of minutes, March 2nd, 2021. Do I have any action? Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes 6-0. Public comment. I asked people to sign up with me ahead of time. I am not seeing anybody here. So we will move on to City Council Liaison to the School Committee. Councilor Concanon is in the audience. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Do you have anything to address the school committee?
No, I do not. I just thought I would take advantage of the opportunity to come in person. I've been watching your meetings online and learned a lot from them, but I think it's really valuable to be here in person if possible.
Well,
So I'm looking forward to the discussion, the continued discussion on the reopening, and of course, discussion on the budget. So thank you for having me.
thank you. I really appreciate you coming. And I see that we have our student representative, Faith Frangudo, on Google Meets. So if the superintendent could allow Ms. Frangudo to speak, if you'd like to address the school committee.
Sure. Faith, if you want to unmute and address the school committee, that'd be great.
Yes. So for the high school agenda, as of March 24th, the fall 2 or wedge season for sports is in full swing, and sports begin after April break. Testing taking place from present through end of school year will be the access testing for ELs continuing through May 20th. The goal is to complete prior to the beginning of the AP exams. The Woburn only SAT was today, March 24th. The seal of biliteracy testing will range from April 5th to April 9th. AP testing, which will be held in person and on paper, which is option 1, will be on the following dates, May 3rd through May 17th. And it's important to note that more students have chosen to take APs this year than any in the past 5 years. Mcas alternate submission will be May 5th. Mcas English and Math testing for grades 11 and 10 will be on the dates May 18th through early June. Mcas testing for the science, which is for freshmen only, and accelerated and honors bio for the class of 2024. Seniors are working on ordering caps and gowns, applying for scholarships and internships. The lip dub will take place this year as it did last year virtually, but the kids, the WPMC, and yearbook advisors are working hard to make this happen. The yearbook staff submitted the complete book to Herrick Jones and were commended for the professionalism of their book, as well as being one of the first to submit nationally. The school implementation team is meeting this Friday to plan for a reopening, and the faculty and custodial team is working to put classrooms and other spaces back together to pre-COVID standards in terms of furniture. Best Buddies is hosting a Spread the Word to End the Word banner drive in the main lobby over the next week to raise awareness. Best Buddies will be holding a couple of events over the next month to celebrate St. Patrick's Day and potentially a movie together while maintaining social distancing and all CDC precautions. And lastly, the step and dance teams are beginning to organize and practice while maintaining social distancing and all CDC precautions. And that concludes my high school reports.
Thank you, Ms. Frenduto. Does anyone have any questions for our student representative, Dr. Wells?
Yeah, through the superintendent, maybe you could ask her, has she heard from her fellow students how many are thinking of not taking the AP exam since we made it optional this year? If she's heard any feedback from students.
Yes, so as far as my AP classes, a majority of them are in fact planning to take it with the binding policy, which meaning they have to take all AP exams for all the classes they take. I only know of 1 or 2 classmates of mine who are not planning to take it, but all students feel as though it is worth it to take an exam after going through such a rigorous class.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
I'm amazed by the articulation of this young lady. It's really, like, she can answer questions like on the spot.
If you could just stay on for the rest of the meeting and answer any questions.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Ms.
Nope,
Frenduto?
thank you.
I'm not seeing any. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. And again, you're welcome to stay and listen to the school committee to help us deliberate. You just can't vote, so it's up to you.
Thank you for having me.
Of
right.
course, absolutely.
Have a good night, Faith.
All right, moving right along to reports and presentation of, I should mention, by the way, that this is a public meeting. It's being live streamed by Woburn Public Media, and anybody that's going to speak will be recorded. Got to. Ms. Mulrennan did not remind me, it's his fault. Reports and presentation of superintendent and staff, updates, return to full-time learning.
Sure.
Dr. Crowley.
So I have a few things going on to coordinate. The good news is, and it's reiterating what we talked about last week, or at the last meeting, we are coming back to school. So since that time, we've had multiple meetings with multiple different stakeholder groups, including today with principals, with union leadership, with district-wide leadership. And so the dates still remain the same. So April 5th, just to reiterate, all elementary schools are coming back to full in-person. At the middle schools, April 5th, it'll be the hybrid but extended day that we've talked about. So for the 2 weeks leading up to April vacation. And the middle school principals today expressed their gratitude, actually, to have a little bit of a transitional time heading into the vacation break. And at April 26th, the Monday right after vacation, everybody will be coming back to full in-person that selected to do so. And so those dates remain the same. According to a call with the Commissioner Riley the other day, 91% of the elementary schools in the Commonwealth are coming back on April 5th. So Woburn falls well into that category, and so we exceed the target date for the middle schools and the high school. But again, it's a tribute to the leadership at the schools, but also Faith mentioned his building implementation teams. There's really a lot of work that's happening at each school with the teams. So people on the teams, it's voluntary, include teachers, nurses, a lot of custodial staff, facilities are engaged in this process because there's a lot of work to be done as it relates to that, putting the school back together. And so it really has been a process that is decentralized. We're trying to support as much as possible, but the work is being done at the school level. I mentioned facilities, and I'm going to deviate slightly. On Sunday, I got a call from the facilities director, Dave Dunkley, that there was, and he usually doesn't call on Sundays.
And you knew it wasn't good.
And I knew it, yeah, so I knew it wasn't, just to see how my weekend was going. And at that point, it was going really well because it was nice weather. But anyway, all that to say, there was an electrical mechanical issue at the high school on Sunday that was found out. A circuit board had to be replaced, and it was not able to be done on Sunday afternoon. And so we pivoted to the remote model on Monday. And that was, again, a tribute to the facilities group. Damian Ruggieris, who's at the high school, ran point for a lot of this work and deserves a great deal of credit. The teachers responded remarkably well, went in on Sunday night to grab what they needed so they would be able to teach at home on Monday. You know, it really, again, speaks to the spirit of cooperation, collaboration, and flexibility that, you know, the pandemic is created here. So I didn't want to overlook that sort of silver lining, if you will. The surveys, as you know, and the public at this point knows, have closed as to people's planning, and I'll talk about that momentarily. We pushed out another survey today about transportation because we need to know who's going to take a bus, and then we need to assign seats on who's taking the bus. So all of the planning has to get done again as it relates to transportation and safety. So Bob and Kerry Carpenter really are kind of running point on that initiative, but that information, that survey's out and live until Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. So we can plan over the weekend and then into next week about bus routes and capacity. We did joke that we're tired of surveys, and that it'd be nice to go maybe a week or two or 3 or 4 without a survey. So I'm sure people at home would appreciate if we don't survey them for a little bit. But anyway, that is how we are gathering information. The return to school numbers predicated on the survey that did go out. As of right now, at the elementary level, there are 91 students returning from the virtual academy back into full in person. So again, 91 students at the elementary level coming back, and 10 students that are in the hybrid model pivoting to the virtual academy. So we have a net of 81 students returning. The middle schools, we have 25 students who are returning from the virtual academy and 6 students that are opting to go into the virtual academy. And then at the high school, we have 12 students who are coming back in person and 5 are pivoting to the virtual academy. And so overall, I think you just heard, the numbers are more people clearly are coming back to school than pivoting into the virtual academy. That being said, the virtual academy, I know it's been a question, at this time is going to remain intact with the teachers that are in the virtual academy. I know that was a question mark that we talked about at the last meeting as it related to staffing, but we're able to figure out because it's not like there's one class that everyone's flooding to. It's going to be distributed, and so we're able to maintain the staffing of the virtual academy as is. And so, again, it's a credit to Wendy's nodding, Bob, Mike. This is Courtney Young, who's the virtual academy guru. You know, and the principals. We're really just trying to figure out how to put this giant puzzle together. And so. It's not done, but that's where we are today. We do have a couple postings up on School Spring, lunch monitor positions, daily substitute positions, and long-term psychologist position. So, you know, there are some open positions, vacancies, but not nearly the volume that we had back in August when we were trying to figure out how to open 3 different models at the same time. So, and I think I'm going to pause and just answer any questions people may have. You may have some, and so I don't want to overshare.
I think Dr. Wells has a question.
Of course. Yeah, I was just wondering, to Dr. Bulber, through the chair to Dr. Bulber, how did it go with the high need students that have been at the high school? Were they able to, did they go remote also, or?
As of right now, we brought back.
No, I meant on that Monday. How did that work? that Monday?
On Monday, we'll
Yeah,
have
they
closed
were all
high school.
remote.
Everybody's remote.
They were remote
Yeah,
too?
so, yeah.
I thought you
so-
were asking about the cohort.
No,
Yeah, we couldn't have people in the
No,
Yeah, you couldn't, oh.
yeah, it was, the electrical issue affected the intercom,
Yeah,
the
okay.
elevator, the phone system, and the internet.
And so were we able to read, because those students
Yeah,
were
so-
traditionally would have been in the school all the time, so.
Right, yeah, so the students Monday, so what we learned on, because of the pandemic is, I actually have a checklist,
Yeah.
and Maureen Ryan's name is on that checklist,
Okay.
because she has to coordinate with NRT Transportation, and then coordinates with the special ed families, and then Bob does the other transportation, so
So we reached
we
out
figured
to
out
all
a
those
workflow.
students and their families. to make sure
Yeah,
that-
and actually, a shout out, if you will, to Officer Fumacello, who came in early on Monday and kind of did, a few students did show up,
Yeah.
and he said, school's not open. They celebrated, and then you actually have to go home, and school's online. So.
That's good. The other question I had, and this is just to suggest, you mentioned about lunch monitors and substitutes, and you said you put it on the Springs
Yeah.
thing. But should we think about advertising that locally? Because, that might be positions that people in the community might fill.
Yeah, I think we talked about this going into the Daily Times
Yeah.
and the Patch or those
Okay.
kinds of
Yeah.
local.
Okay, that's good. And then I'm kind of intrigued a little bit about people that were in the hybrid model, because essentially, the hybrid model, they were going to school, and so they were familiar, and then opting out of that. And I don't know, did you get any feedback, what the thought was? Because essentially all it was doing hybrid more days. And, I can see people being fearful if they've never been to school, but I'm just wondering if there was any thought, any reasons, or not reasons, but any common themes about why people might have decided to move their children.
I can't. I
You
haven't
didn't get anything on the
teased that
surveys?
out yet. I don't know. If,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Mr. Kissel?
I'd actually be more interested in the ones that were fully remote that are now going back, 100%. So, but anyways, on the buses, you mentioned on the buses.
Yes.
You sent the survey. I didn't actually read through it. I apologize, but I'm assuming it's once they set that they say yes to the bus, they get an assigned seat, and that's it.
Correct.
So if you've got kids that a parent that day, particular day, can't drive them, that maybe would have, are they not going to be allowed on the bus? And if so, what happens if they don't really get it and they're at the bus stop? The bus.
I don't think we're ever going to say no to a kid
Yeah, no, I
that
think
that's at the bus stop. But we are going to maintain the tags that we
Okay.
have, so that if a student, if it becomes a daily occurrence, where
Yeah, I'm thinking once in a while
yeah.
situations
But-
will happen.
Yeah, but I believe our buses are 77 seat capacity, so we should have space available to ensure that if that were to happen, a student would be able to get on the bus.
And maybe you already, someone already talked about it. How many seats are going to be taken on a 77?
Well,
Is it going to be full?
it
Well,
depends. We don't know.
It may not be full.
Yeah, it may not.
Okay.
But the guidance is that there can be more than one student per seat.
Okay, that's what I
Not
thought.
brother and sister anymore.
Yeah, and so the students, will be masked,
Yeah.
windows down.
Okay. I think that's all I had on the buses. So,
Yeah, and again, it's one of these logistical things that have to happen, to where the stops are, for example. I think the routes largely will stay the same, but the drivers need to know where to stop, because, they may have stopped at a place last year that they don't need to this year. So the timing of the buses will need to be watched, particularly over the first few days.
And I know during the hybrid, are they going to still do the clean between each route, or each grade level? School, when they go from
Each one.
Yes.
Between, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, from the different grade schools. So that still is going to happen.
Yes,
The guns, yeah.
Just on the bus thing,
Let's be careful, it's the spray cleaning apparatus.
on the busing, the survey, was that sent to all parents? Are parents going to be confused if their child doesn't normally get a bus and be looking for a bus? Or was it confined, you know, because?
I can say, having done the survey earlier today, that's covered in it.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't want somebody, wait, I answered yes.
It asks for the status and then asks what you want to do. and-
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to be as,
Yep.
remove ambiguity as much as
Right,
we
yeah.
can. Right.
That's good.
All right. Any more questions on this portion of the presentation? Yes, Mr.
And
Mulrennan?
maybe it's part two of Dr. Crowley's presentation, but I wanted to talk about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, obviously, the answer is going to be we're going to monitor it as we have been, but I'm sure, you know, as each division opens up at different levels, if there happens to be a spike due to large numbers, or if we have spikes going on again right now, everyone that needs to be notified will be notified, and that classroom will be under guidance and quarantine, whatever they have to do. But that will continue upon reopening, and we're going to have more numbers. Maybe that's part two of your presentation, but just so parents understand that we're still going to do what we did. We're aware there's going to be more children in the building, and it's just going to be a little bit stricter, or you may find out more news.
Yeah, so, you know, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, COVID has not gone away, and I think we need to be candid about that. The contact tracing radius still is 6 feet, so we may be contacting more students than we had to in the past when they were 6 feet apart, as it relates to if there's a positive in that space. And we will continue to follow all the protocols that we have in place and monitor accordingly. I think Dr. Wells asked at the last meeting, you know, we still are using that dashboard, so we get notified when there's cases, and that dashboard is updated in real time. And so Mary Heater is our point person, and has been doing a great job working really 7 days a week and all the nurses really have been. So we'll, again, continue to do that. According to recent DESE conversation and guidance, we can, you know, individually we can manage it, you know, to close a classroom or a wing or something to that effect. Anything really beyond that, if we had to close a school or the district, you know, we need to go through the state to get sort of have that sanctioned. They'll let us do it, but we just can't arbitrarily or independently do that.
And if I may keep along the COVID theme, sorry, if you just want to talk about the topic of vaccination for our staff people.
So the anecdotally, I was asking principals today, the overall theme is about 70% have at least one shot. The next 4 Saturdays, I believe, have been set aside for educators, and so hopefully, you know, our staff have been able to get signed up. The nurses are asking people to give them that information, not requiring it necessarily, and so we're tracking it to the best that we can, and it would be great if at some point we're able to provide that service here in Woburn.
Maybe we will someday, but it's good to hear that we're getting there, so appreciate the information and update. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulrennan. Mr. Kissel, you had another question?
Just real quick on that, since we're talking about classrooms, someone's positive, you got 6 feet around, and I know the angles and so on. What about, you know, again, we're kind of thinking a little further out, but student on a bus, you know, that goes from, you know, that student is positive and they were on the bus, and that affects different classrooms. I mean, if a student on a bus, you know, I mean, that takes a bus, and a classroom is found to be positive, they're on a bus, they're affecting or potentially affecting the bus, which again affects
Correct.
the classrooms that those kids go into.
Right.
And
Which is why we have assigned seats
Right, so
on the
it'll be 6
buses,
feet from the
so
bus.
that we
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
we'll be able to tell.
Yeah, that person.
talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mr. Kissel, did you have a follow-up?
Oh.
Okay. Dr. Wallace?
Yeah, following up on the COVID discussion. So have, you know, because the latest evidence seems to indicate the greatest risk is the adult staff being transmitters and so forth. And so we reiterated with the staff, you know, protocols for when they're having lunch together and things like that, because that seems to be where the biggest issue's been when they look back at the past year.
I believe that, again, the building implementation teams have been really trying to focus on that.
Okay.
One of the, people miss eating lunch in the
Right.
in the rooms together.
Right.
But they understand
Yeah.
that this is the
Right.
reality at this
Yeah.
point.
And then the other thing is, would it be worthwhile at some point to get some medical expert to give a presentation to our staff about, and answer questions about the vaccine? Because I know that's what we do at work, because there are some people that are hesitant for a number of reasons, some good, some not so good, but just to alleviate fears, to try to, make sure that as many people as possible get the vaccine.
So I'm open to that idea. I'm turning to Mr. Alcanada briefly, because I think 91% of our staff, or 97% of our staff, indicated willingness to get the vaccine. If I'm not,
Yes, that is correct. Approximately, when we sent that survey out initially, 96 to 97% said that they would get the vaccine, or they had, at that point, they had already been in process of
Okay.
getting the vaccine.
Because I heard a 70% number, that's why I brought that up.
well, they've already been
Okay.
vaccinated. There's
Okay.
people that are
Okay.
still awaiting their
Okay,
first.
all right, that's, okay,
yeah.
then that's fine then. Okay, thank you.
All right, and Mr. Lipset?
Just to go off Dr. Will's point, though, I think that might be something to think about in the fall when we start knowing more about community vaccination, and especially when it starts to be opened up to students older and younger.
Yeah, and you could do it as part of your opening day, you
Yeah.
always have speakers and have 15
And a
minutes.
back-to-school night for
Yeah.
families in
Right.
general. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple members of the Woburn community, parents,
Yeah.
who are doctors,
Yeah.
volunteer for that
Right.
exact
Oh, good.
So nice.
reason. So,
That's great.
yeah.
Any further questions? Just one from me. Dr. Crowley, could you just, there was a document that went out that said that the high school opening is conditional on teachers have vaccinations.
No,
Would you mind clarifying that?
Yeah, that was incorrect.
Yeah, okay. So there's no conditions
No,
on the
there's no
school?
conditions.
Okay, thank you. And just for the public knowledge, like larger elementary schools, what kind of, just generally speaking, what innovations have been done to make sure the classrooms can fit all the kids?
Sure.
Just not specific school, but just to alleviate the concerns on
Yeah.
some of those.
Two things. One, you mentioned the high school. So Ms. Callahan is going to release her plans specific to the high school tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So it's not yet out.
Mhm.
It's a little bit more complicated, and she had a little bit more time to as a run-up. But just if anyone's listening, wondering when the high school plan is coming, the answer is tomorrow.
Oh, thank
And
you.
not surprisingly, it's comprehensive.
Of course it
So,
is.
and then I don't know, Wendy, if you want to talk about the second part of the question as it
Yeah.
relates to elementary schools.
About the elementary school, so we're following the 3-foot of spacing,
Mhm.
seat edge to seat edge, front to back, back to front. We've looked at numbers, we've gotten our survey results back, and with the information that we have as of today, we have classrooms that we can open. There are 3 spaces that we're looking at, and trying to alleviate some. It's still, the kids' desks still fit in 3 feet to 3 feet, but it's
Mhm.
very tight. So we're looking at that with the principals, working with the teachers, to make sure that we can keep everybody safe, keep people connected to their teachers that they currently have. So we're working on that. Within the cafeterias,
Mhm.
principals have scheduled lunches differently in some buildings, and there's areas that are being used to allow to maximize seating as best we can, but still keeping the 6 feet with Mass Soc. We're looking at outside, and how we can use outside. For example, we have one school that reached out to the DPW and I think quite ingenious, are using tree stumps that have been sealed, and they put them out to like as a classroom outside, so you can go out and the kids can sit on the stump.
Yeah.
So like that, I'm like, oh, we gotta cut down some more trees.
Wow, that's awesome.
So there's a lot of work around that, and the cleanliness, the cleaning will continue as it has in the past. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
does
And
that
I
answer
also,
your question?
yeah, no, it definitely did. And I also just note that it looks like as of now, the VA students aren't going to have any change in teachers.
As of right now, we do not feel that we need
So
to
that's really
impact
tremendous.
the teachers in Virtual Academy.
Good, because I'm assuming that parents felt concerned that we're going to drain the resources from VA of all the kids' exodus to full in person.
And I think one of our concerns, not so much draining resources from places, but making shifts for students at this time of the year. We understand, especially our younger kids, the attachments that they have with their teachers, and to disrupt that is hard to try and figure out. And so we worked really hard to not have to do that.
That's great. Thank you very much. Ms. Cormier, did you have a question?
Just
Mr.
a
Lipset?
quick to clarify, when you say seat edge to seat edge, is it my chair or is it my desk seat, the seat itself?
And Mr. Lipset?
Just because I've heard a couple of community concerns, and I followed up on this with Mr. Alcanada, but I wanted to just give you a chance to also mention there's been discussion of cardboard dividers between seats at lunch, and I just wanted to see if you wanted to clarify that for the public too.
They're more than cardboard barriers. They're corrugated finishes that are stronger than cardboard in terms of their appearance and how they will hold up to cleaning after every lunch period. So we do have those on order, and we'll have those ready where necessary.
Thank you. 'Cause I know I've heard that concern from a few different directions, so I just wanted to
Yeah,
make
we've
sure
heard it
that-
too, and one of the things I think it's easy to explain, it's like the lawn signs.
Yeah.
So that it can stand up to,
I mean, I have some of those at home if you guys want to
Yeah,
use
right.
them. Quite a few.
Impermeable.
There could be a conflict.
Donated that political sign.
Maybe we could do
I'll
that.
drop mine off.
I feel like there might be
Where
some
did I get the
problems
least
with that.
number of votes?
Mr. Lipset, did you have,
I'm all set.
okay. Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to the superintendent again, I know last meeting we emphasized, and now we're getting, word out that each school that has a team together, just again emphasize the point of contact at each building, Dr. Crowley, would be?
The building principal.
All right, just so people know that that's where the concerns can be directed, so.
Got it right.
Yeah.
Dr. Wells?
Now that we're bringing our students back into the school, what's our student population numbers in terms of, how many, what's the difference from last year? How many students are we currently following academically this year? You don't have it right this second, maybe it's some other time.
I don't have a total. There's a slight drop in
Yeah.
some schools. I don't,
Okay.
I know other districts have reported like their kindergarten numbers were
Right.
significant drops. We had a drop, but it wasn't.
Okay.
It
Then we can
wasn't
just get those numbers.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we can-
Coincide with the kids going back to school, that'd
Yep.
be good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Wells.
Yep.
Okay, just sorry, one more question. Dr. Baldessari, I was on a meeting today, and you were talking about kind of innovating on school reopening, just social emotionally.
Yeah. Well, not only were we concerned, obviously, for the students who are coming back, but also because they're also departing. They're leaving the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, where they've developed really strong relationships with personnel there. So we're talking about having a goodbye celebrations there, welcome celebrations here. And then I talked with our partners just about the document that we have that went through all the principals with about a dozen or so recommendations for preparing for the social emotional return of students. And what I'll do in a moment is I'll share that document with all committee members so you can see the types of activities that the principals have been planning. And that way you can it's not a guarantee that all 12 of them are going to happen at all 10 schools, but there will be a multitude of these activities taking place, and supports will be in place for our kids.
Thank you. I just was really touched by that. So
Yeah, it was a great meeting.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
it'd probably be appropriate at this time to send a letter of thanks to those organizations for setting up this program. They knew it could potentially be short time, and, they went out of their way to set up these programs knowing that they had a limited lifetime, and I think,
Yes.
we should just, recognizing their contribution to this crisis and how they helped the city. So I'd make a motion that we send a letter to both I think there was only two, but if there were more, however many organizations that were involved in helping us educate our children during this time.
Dr. Wells, so you're aware it's not over. They're going to be sending our staff their staff
Right.
to us now as well.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah.
the program,
Yeah.
but they essentially
Yeah.
rearranged their
No doubt.
whole
Yes.
building and did all
Yes.
this interest stuff,
Now
Got it.
now it's breakdown, so we gotta go pick up the desks.
I have a second in the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. I'll draft that letter. All right, did you cover everything you wanted to on that?
I did.
Anything more? Okay. All right,
Well done.
moving on, fiscal year 2022, our first review of fiscal year budget. Dr. Mastropianato.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the school committee for allowing me to present the draft budget at this point. As you can see, I have spent, myself and all of my colleagues, we have spent a lot of time on the process, restructuring the budget format, as you'll see in just a few moments, and realigning expenditures and line items to get some higher hanging out for our buck. So it has been a team effort, and we still have a ways to go. Just quickly on the process, we began in November, December with the submission of budget packets, and like everything else this year, we have been continually impacted by COVID. Just when we thought COVID might subside, it reared its ugly head again and put us off track. We began meetings in late January with principals and department heads, and that has continued obviously through this month. In constructing this draft budget, as I said, there's been a significant restructuring and realigning, which we will talk about in greater detail in just a few moments. The salary contractual obligations have been reflected in this draft budget. Some line items have been increased. For example, we have gone ahead and increased out of district tuition for electricity. We restored the substitute line item and the 403B employer cost to FY20 levels. And freshman sports has been put back in this budget. As you know, that was eliminated last fiscal year. In terms of funding sources, I think it's most important to talk about this year is COVID has impacted local receipts. Mayor Galvin and all of the City Hall have been very generous in allowing us to operate in this hybrid model, but we are aware of the local receipts not being what they typically are in normal years. We also will qualify for ESSER 2, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. Woburn Public Schools will be eligible for approximately $1.96 million, which will be available to spend immediately, including this fiscal year, and we can roll that over into FY22 and 23 if necessary. And at this point, we feel that we will spend some in this year to fulfill our obligations and operations, and probably roll over about $1 million into next year. And then, as you might have heard, at the federal level, with the new $1.9 trillion stimulus plan called the American Rescue Plan, that is going to provide grant monies to a host of local communities. It is estimated that we could be eligible for approximately $4 million, maybe a little bit more. And again, that is likely to be able to be spent in FY22 and 23. So in terms of our next steps, I just want to make note that this draft budget is a budget of moment in time. A lot of work has gone into it. However, over the next 5 or 6 weeks, the Finance Committee, Subcommittee, and School Committee will impact this budget, and will continue to tie closely more with our strategic plan. And the other final thing I wanted to say in terms of next steps is typically we would have an appendix to a budget. However, with this amount of significant grant monies, my strong recommendation would be to create an appendix to the budget so that we can keep those expenditures clean. We'll know where they are, and they won't be buried in various line items in the budget, since it is a significant amount of money. So we'll be working on that over the next 5 to 6 weeks. In terms of summary, just to refresh your memory, last year the school committee approved and City Hall signed off on a $68.238 million budget. This summary that you'll see in just a few moments is a budget of $70,696,000 and change. It represents, at this moment, a 3.6% increase over FY21. And as you can see in the italicized sentence, it does not account for any new positions that have been requested in FY22. That is, we've kept those aside to determine how best to get those into the budget. So we're at a 3.6 at the moment. I'm going to switch over. I hope everyone can see that. This is the budget summary. It might look and feel a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. But as you can see, in the middle are your cost centers. There's FY21 salaries, operating costs, and the final budget, and the fiscal and the FY22 with the corresponding increases. And as you can see, it is a $78 million budget with a 3.6% increase. I want to draw your attention to Administration Central Office and that red asterisk. This is what I was talking about, the restructuring and the realigning of these line items. You can see that huge, looks like a massive increase, but it really isn't. It's more of a realigning of line items to properly come under administration and central office. And you can see in district-wide on row 16 a corresponding decrease of over $3.3 million. And we'll get to that in just a moment. When we talk about our new budget requests, it would add approximately $3.7 million, which would bring this increase to over 9%. However, some of those new budget requests could be stimulus money could be used for that, and that would bring it down to 7.37. Those are just the expenditures at the moment that we've identified as potential for stimulus. There may be additional expenditures. So as we get into this as a finance subcommittee and the school committee as a whole, we'll review this a little bit in more detail. But that is essentially what the new format might look like. So this $3,766,000 figure. So I wanted to reconcile that for you just a little bit, so not only the school committee, but the community can understand the massive restructuring that is taking place. You can see that of that $3.7 million, there's almost $58,000 in contractual increase to salaries. And we've transferred a 0.3 partial salary from revolving over to the budget. $3,682,500 has been reallocated from district-wide. So it came from district-wide over the central administration. And line item increases account for $26,500. So when you really look at that 3.7 number, the actual line item increase is a fraction of it at $26,500. Further down on the reconciliation, the way we get to $3.682 million is the initial $3,225,000 comes from district-wide. The 403B employer costs that I talked about, that has come over and increased by $300,000. The substitute line item, a small increase to vocational tuitions. Tuition reimbursement has increased by $25,000. Our insurance for our students, a modest $3,000. Sick leave, buyback, and bus transportation. The salary adjustment line item has actually decreased. So that's just a quick run through a reconciliation of the $3,682,000. To the right of that is a listing of the $26,500 in increases. Our printing program and copy paper has increased by $55,000. Patty McKinnon, our assistant business manager, who's with us tonight, and who has come for this ride that I've taken everybody on. She has done a lot of work in looking at some line items that have been under budgeted, if you will, and this was one where we were spending more money than had been budgeted in the past few years. So it's time to put what the budget number actually is. Licensure reimbursement is a new line item. There are select groups that are reimbursed for their licensure. It has hit in different line items, and I just felt it necessary now to centralize it in one line item. And you can see travel stipends, service and license agreements, and postage have all decreased, netting to the 26.5. So that's essentially a quick reconciliation of how that line item looks like it's a massive increase, but it's really moving some monies around, realigning, and it's a small little increase. At the same time, the reconciliation of the district-wide decrease, you saw a $3.3 million decrease. Actually, the salaries are going to reduce by over $47,000. And then the $3,335,000 has been reallocated to administration, curriculum, and student services. Sub-reconciliation, we've already seen the $3,225,000 that was reallocated to administration. $75,000 was sitting in district-wide for a curriculum development line item. It made no sense sitting there. It should be under curriculum, and so that's what I've done. Translators and interpreters for $30,000 seemed to be more appropriate in Dr. Baldessari's umbrella, and so we moved that into his budget, if you will. And then the office supplies line item for that budget cost center has been eliminated. That's how we get to the $335,000 line item decrease. And then just quickly, then the further reconciliation of student services, as you can see, that is gone up by $52,000, but it's really the $30,000 translator interpreter line that we talked about, the $75,000 in curriculum. I've included IT because that appears to be a double-digit increase. It's really just a small contractual increase. We're transferring a paraprofessional from the high school into IT, so that obviously offsets the high school budget increases IT. And then recognition of a salary and breaking out the intern stipend, and that's how we get to that reallocation and increase of $126,000. So, any questions before I get to the, yes?
Dr. Wells?
Yeah. Fine, moving money around, but it's just not clear to me, like, what was the guiding principle with, what does district-wide represent? Like, so sort of if I had like the definitions of all the headings, I might better be able to understand it, because it just seems like you move things around, there's some rationale, but what does district-wide mean in terms of a budget? What should go in there?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. In terms of district-wide, what it appeared to be were those teachers of art, health, physical ed, art, some that nature, where they might be in several different schools. However, also under district-wide was homeless transportation, bus transportation, 403B, tuition reimbursement. It just didn't seem that, although it's called district-wide, it didn't seem that those are more central administration, central office expenditures. So that's why I have essentially moved them under a central heading. So district-wide simply now will include the aforementioned teachers and some instructional supply line that they'll use. And so it truly is a district-wide instructional budget, if you will.
And will it decrease the amount of line items in the budget?
I don't know that the overall line items will decrease in the budget. Obviously, they are drastically reduced in district-wide,
Right.
and they have significantly increased in central administration. But overall, I don't see the line items reducing.
And, just a comment, the 3.6, and then seeing, that's with no new positions, and then seeing the two, it seems as though we're doing a redux last year. It's just coached a little better, maybe. I'm just concerned, when we have these things that are going to up to 9 or 7% increases, but we're talking about a 3.6. It's very confusing for the public. It's going to be very confusing. Where do we start as our starting point? Last year we started with a high starting point and we ended up going down. This year I'm not sure where we're starting as. Are we starting with a 3.6 and saying that's what we're going to review, or are we starting with the new positions? And
So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think this is just, we have a lot of work to do.
Okay.
To get to a reason, to that figure. I think what we're trying to do is share where we are right today with what things look like as sort of an opening to the school committee and to the public of the process that where we are. We've met individually, as Mr. Alcanada said, but we haven't, we've only met once to look through this because we have to make choices.
Right.
And we have not done that yet.
Okay. All right.
So I think, very good question, Dr. Wells. What's clear to me is that other than contractual obligations and essentially a level funded budget with some minor increases, we're at 3.6.
Right.
So in doing almost nothing,
Right.
we're at 3.6. We need to ascend to a budget that is going to meet all of your spending priorities tied to our strategic plan and still come in at a respectable number. So, it's two ways of looking at it. You can start high and cut, or you can start with a level funded contractual obligations and see what can fit in on the new requests and what can essentially come out. And also, as I said before, we have significant monies coming from the state and federal level that need to be looked at because, we don't want necessarily recurring charges in those grants. So there's, as I said, there's a lot of work. It's a budget and time. And there'll be a lot of decisions to make, as there always are.
Yeah. No, and we've talked about the money that's coming in, I've mentioned that I think, money that comes in is not a sustainable influx of money. It has to be treated as money that's going to go away, and putting it in personnel is not probably the best way, at least my view. But we could talk about more. The other thing I just noticed in the surrounding communities, and maybe, this isn't directed at the administration, but more at the way city government works in Woburn. I like how, like in Burlington and Winchester, they have a meeting of the city government and the school department. They come to a consensus about what the figure should be, and then they say, go do it. I know we do it differently here, but I think it just, I think it works better.
We have a consensus. I'm sorry.
Right. But they don't go, with a high number because they know they can't get there. And we're sort of, it puts everybody in a bad light in a sense because we know there are needs, but we know there are needs that we can't do this year, or not a needs, but expectations of moving the program forward. And we know we can't get there. And it just, puts us up for looking like, the city isn't supporting the educational process because we have all these expectations, but we can't reach it because we don't have enough money. And I just kind of wish that somewhere down the road, there could be a consensus so that we could all say, okay, here's what the school department's going to get. We've talked, all the stakeholders have been involved, and then we work from that. But that's just my hope for the future. But look forward to working with the administration over the next few weeks.
Mr. Kissel.
Hopefully I'm not repeating that question, but you're at, with the 3.6 number, is that taking into account any of the ARP money or any of the other grant money at all?
No, it doesn't. It's
Okay.
a 3.6% increase. Obviously, it would be budget decrease at this point if that was all put in.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering.
Budget.
And does that money have to be, is it earmarked for certain things that we need to shift things around?
It's quite broad in terms of it will support a broad range of academics from curriculum to educational technology to facilities in terms of improving ventilation, PPE equipment. It's truly meant to allow school districts to come back and figure out where their deficiencies are and help them along.
And then the final question is it says up there given to WPS, but is it going to City Hall and we need to get it, or is it going right to us?
Well, from what I understand, these are going to be grants straight to the school district. So obviously it will reside at City Hall. I will work with the city auditor and city treasurer to set up accounts, line items, and so those eligible expenses would be charged to those accounts.
And just in the past, I mean, we talk about a little bit, obviously, if we've got X amount of dollars coming, whatever that amount is, was it close to 6, 1.9 and 4?
Yeah, it's 1.96 million on ESSER 2, and what we believe will be 4 million, or perhaps a little bit more than 4 million from the American Rescue Plan.
So just under 6 million. So obviously, City Hall is going to know that, going to see that, and obviously, potentially adjust, if we were going to get 4%, it might be a tiny bit less. So hopefully we can use it for what it's supposed to be used for. Great, thanks.
I have put together a summary of new spending requests. These are not all of them. These are the major ones. There has been a request to add a history coordinator for grades 6 through 12, increase the curriculum development line item, add 2 instructional coaches, a new elementary and middle school reading and math curriculums, which will be approximately $1.2 million. As you can see, ARP, that would be a perfect item for the American Recovery Plan. Those are not recurring charges. There might be some small little charges in the future, but those would not be recurring by true definition. With SPED, there's been a request for 5 new SPED teachers, 4 SPED paras for early childhood program paraprofessionals, increase our EL director from a 0.5 FTE to a 1.0, adding 2 additional EL teachers for the elementary and secondary. Dave Dunkley has been asking for a district feasibility study so that we can take a look at all of our buildings and determine over the next 10 years what needs to be done, not only from the building envelope, but from our plumbing, electrical, and mechanical systems, so that we understand year by year, perhaps for the next decade, what needs to be done to keep our schools safe, properly maintained. It is possible that could be in a capital budget. And then in technology, the broad maintain and upgrade enhanced infrastructure, as we have heard over the past year, our IT, Jen Judkins, went from a 5-year plan and did it in about 9 or 10 months. So there was a lot of standing up of infrastructure that really needs to be maintained. So there has been an ask to continue to maintain those infrastructures and allow us to continue to be affiliated to use all of these Chromebooks and other platforms that we have learned from over the past year. So that is the summary of the request, which we certainly can we will get into as a group as a whole and determine what is our priority for FY22.
Thank you very much for laying that out. Mr. Kissel.
Are we on the same deadline as in years past, the budget?
Yes?
Right now we are.
Just keeping that, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Lipset.
Would you call this in order of, I don't know, let's say preference, but
No.
this is just sort of
it's
a...
not order of priority or preference. It is just there.
Okay.
That's how he typed
Did
it.
you want I think he wanted the history on top.
Yeah.
History's right on top.
There you go. Way it should be.
Any more questions? Mr. Mulroney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, Bob, when I saw you presenting tonight, I know it's the first night, and thinking back to last year when we cut the freshman sports, I see you're going to reinstitute that. And I know last year was a financial matter, and it was a hard task to do that. So I'm glad to see that that's coming back. I'm glad to see a lot of things coming back. But the figure you gave, and I'm sure Chairperson Crowley will speak to this as well. There's got to be something here for the needs of our socio-emotional return to school. We're calling it normal return, the normalcy of students, staff, and families, and I'll turn to Mike for that, but you know, that could be $3.79 million in its own category that I don't see it anywhere. And speaking in other subcommittees, I know Ms. Ryan has a couple of measures in here, and again, and because I've been around a while, and others up here have, it may come down to a compliance matter. You know, that to do this and that, it's by law we have to have this ratio, or by law we have to have that, which is great. It's a necessary evil to make those things and services provided to our students and our families. But again, it's the first glance of this, and it's a good way to show it, because to Dr. Wells' point before, it was, you know, all four of us would specialized teachers, but we traveled to 4 different schools, and we were in different school categories. So now to make it easier on you guys, it's just kind of in another nutshell for you guys to follow. So my concern there would be, is it still going to be the individual principal dealing with individual school building budgets
Oh,
as normal? I mean,
yes.
staff-wise and whatnot, so it's just those other members you talked about are just coming under a general category of district staff.
Yes, absolutely. All of the 10 schools have their own budgets. And we'll continue, and the principals will continue to have significant sway over that budget and how it's spent. It's mainly salary. And to go back to the social emotional, Dr. Baldessari and Ms. Brigg and Ms. Young will not let that not get into the budget. I can assure you of that.
I mean, it's just where that money's all come from, you know, that's down the road a ways, I'm sure, but, you know, it's indicated tonight by a letter that we got a correspondence from regarding simple things as freshman sports. Again, it's kind of simple, it's kind of small item, but to get back to somewhat of normal, these kids need something. These kids need it. It's not going to hopefully come down to dollars and cents. It's something that, along with a lot of these other things, are necessary. And I don't even know where to begin with social emotional needs. I know.
I can give one comment on that.
Sure, please do.
Keep in mind that the committee and the city has made a tremendous investment in social emotional wellness of the students in recent years. And the personnel that, the additional personnel that's been allocated is quite sufficient, and they're doing great work. So a lot of times you make investments and that, you know, you don't see new requests in the years to come because folks are doing good stuff. There are a couple of areas of the budget where you will see some small requests for social emotional, but I'm of the mindset that once you make the investment, you should be reaping the rewards of it, and I shouldn't be coming back to you and asking for more if it's not really, if it's not necessary. So good work's happening. We do have some small requests, but it's not going to be anything really major.
Okay, great. Appreciate, you know, moment in time, Bob and Patty. Great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I want to acknowledge that Patty McKinnon is here. Mr. Alcanada mentioned her, but thank you very much for coming.
She's been
Assistant
whispering,
Business
he's
Manager.
got an earpiece.
Does anyone have any more questions on budget overview? We still have a lot of work to do. Just on behalf of the school committee, we'll state that we will find a balance between, you know, controlling spending, of course, but also moving the district forward and really making sure our kids get what we need. I'm seeing a lot of special ed positions. I think the committee would benefit from presentation from Director Ryan. It seems like she has something in mind that we're excited about improving in district programming. So, and the mayor has made substantial investments in education So I have no doubt that we will be able to come to a consensus that is truly in the best interest of Woburn students. So, anything else on that? Yes, Dr.
Do you want
Wells.
to talk about how we're going to proceed with the budget? Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do it at
Oh, sure. No, wait, so the next steps, Ms. Falconata came up with a different kind of budget review plan. So do you want to review that for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
What we plan on doing is having 2 finance subcommittee meetings between now and the next meeting on April 13th to begin to hash out the budget. We will report our progress after the April 13th meeting. Then between April 13 and April 27th, which will be your second meeting in April, we'll have at least one finance subcommittee, and if necessary, we'll hold another subcommittee meeting. And then on April 27th, after 3 or potentially 4 subcommittee meetings, hopefully the budget will be in a state that will allow us to, will allow you to pass it and send it off to City Hall. Again, I continue to say that when we know the exact number of the American Rescue Plan, what that's going to be and how we can spend it and when we can spend it, that may shift that date a little bit, not the actual school committee date, but we're going to have to be cognizant of that. So we hope over the next 5 or 6 weeks that will come to fruition. So it's a little bit a different process than Woburn has used in the past, but I do think that it will allow the finance subcommittee to get into the nitty-gritty and granular part of the budget.
But the major aspects of the budget will be discussed at the public meeting. In
Without
the
question,
meeting.
they
Yes.
have to be.
Okay.
Without question.
Okay.
So Madam Chairman, my suggestion is we meet on the 29th at 6:30. Just to let the members know, I think in order to expedite the flow of the meeting, we'll have the subcommittee members present in person. We'll have it Zoom so people in the community can watch. And unless other members want to come in person, we're not going to take any questions from the audience. So if members want to come to the in-person meeting, other members not on the finance subcommittee, then we could have questions then. But if they're in the audience, we're not going to, i.e. the electronic audience, we would not take questions from them. I want the members that aren't part of finance to understand that.
Okay.
29th of, are we Zoom?
We're going to Zoom it from here, or however you do it, electronic.
We're going to have an in-person meeting with a remote
Right.
option.
But it's going to be, like we do now with the meeting now, where people, or however we want to do it, Zoom, cable, whatever. But it's the people that are not in the room, we will not be taking questions from people in the electronic audience. I just want to make clear to both the community and the committee members. So if committee members who aren't part of finance want to come and attend, then we can, they can ask questions, because that's fine. But if they're at home, don't expect us to be looking at the chat box or anything. Does that sound like a...
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Thank you, Dr. Wells.
Monday the 20, coming up Monday?
Well,
Yeah.
let
What time?
Chair Chisholm, if she's
Right.
That's
willing,
Monday's
able.
funeral day.
No, we'll figure it out. Okay,
Yeah,
so the
we'll
meeting
figure
will be on March 29th?
Yep, at 6:30.
At 6:30,
Yep.
okay.
And so, I think maybe...
Ms. McLeod, I'll send you the confirmation to post that tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Non-members can come.
Yeah, you can come, yeah.
It will be a public meeting, and
Right.
we'll make
Right.
Zoom available to the public,
Right.
too. Okay.
But the other thing is, we need an agenda for that meeting, like what items in the budget you want to cover. So it sounds like, rather than us at the subcommittee having, like say, Ms. Ryan come in, you'd rather have those at public meeting,
Yes.
which is fine.
Absolutely.
So I think what we need to do is set up, what are we going to discuss?
Who you guys involved.
Yeah, like what items are we going to cover? Do you want to cover the 3.6% budget that day, or do you want to go into the things?
We'll get an agenda squared away and sent out.
Okay.
I think that initially we can go through the budget as is, the 3.6, just to show the new format to all of the finance committee members, and then we can begin talking about some of the priorities of the new spending requests.
And we're going to try to limit the meeting to a max of 2 hours.
Yes.
That way, otherwise we just kind of drone on and on.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to get an agenda because that's Monday.
Well, it has
so-
to be posted tomorrow,
Right,
so
so we need an agenda.
Ms. McLeod is.
And then, so are we getting, I guess we're getting an electronic copy of the budget. It's going to be sent to all the members tonight or today or?
Yes, I can send an electronic copy first thing in the morning.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else, Madam Chairman, you want with regard to that meeting?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll be posting an agenda
Okay.
tomorrow on it,
Okay.
and that will be the first finance meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, again, Bob, sorry to bother you, if you could just back up to maybe the first slide where all the money's coming from the state and the federal people. I just want to take another peek at that, if I may.
This one here?
Sure. I just don't know if, between the administrators that are here tonight, if they're aware of any funding out there that we may not be receiving here as a public school district, and if so, we as a committee would urge our legislators higher up than us to pursue those, but it looks like the money's just out there and it comes to districts anyway, or unless you guys know of anything different that we're missing out on because of whatever reasons.
So there are DESI grants that will be made available for summer learning, for example. Dr. Baldessari's kind of
Okay.
pretty aware, right?
Just kind of on top of any of those that we not,
Right.
you might see that we might kind of push people to remind them?
Just so to be clear, these are entitlement,
There you
which
go.
means that we call them grants, but really, you're just basically explaining to the department what your plans are for expenditure.
Okay.
There are other grants that we will be applying for that are competitive in nature.
Right.
What that means is that they say, we have this much money, and you give us your proposals, and we're going to decide who's going to get it. So what we apply for those all the time. But we generally don't talk about them unless we get them, because we don't want to provide false hope, false
Sure.
promise for ability to do things.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Dr. Wells, the enrollment on October 1st of 2020 was 4,279. And the enrollment on October 1st of 2019 was 4,451. So between 19 and 20, we had a reduction of 172 students, according to data from the Department of Ed.
Yeah. And we start the kindergarten enrollment. Okay. Yep.
So, and obviously we had a number of students
Right.
move to homeschooling. St. Charles was at capacity. A lot of factors that led into the reduction.
All right.
Kind of screwed up that program we had where we paid money to tell us about the population.
A lot of things got
Messed up because of COVID.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year in terms of whether we rebound, hopefully.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Wells.
And
Anything
could
further?
we also have the slides
Yeah.
Yeah.
sent out to us, the members too? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a plan for the budget. We have a meeting start. Okay, great. Early retirement initiative. So this, for the record, was already previewed by the Finance Subcommittee and is coming to the full committee looking for a vote to allow the administration to offer this to staff. So I'll let Dr. Crowley
Yeah, sure.
take it
Just,
away.
I'm going to be brief and just turn to Mr. Alcanada again. It's similar to what we did last year. This offer an incentive to staff, all staff, not just teachers. But as cafeteria paraprofessionals, secretaries, the opportunity to retire early and either retire or choose an alternative career path.
Sure. We began,
Sit in the dark.
the early retirement incentive we began several months ago when we talked to PARS, Public Agency Retirement Services. Their analysis was helpful in determining what our initiative would be, and as a result in the program that you'll be considering tonight. As Dr. Crowley had said, there are essentially, we'll offer this to all employees, and there are two major ways to qualify. The first way would be if an employee has at least 20 years of service to Woburn Public Schools by June 30th, 2021, then they would qualify for a 10% incentive on their FY21 salary. That would ascend all the way to 15%. So if you have 25 years, so 21 years would get you 11, 22 would get you 12%, all the way up to 25 years, where you would get you 15%, and that would be the maximum. So that is one way to qualify. The other way to qualify would be 55 years of age and 5 years of service to Woburn Public, and that would qualify you for just 10%. This percentage would be based on your FY21 base salary. It would not include stipends, longevity, or any other non-regular wages. Assuming that the school committee does approve this, our intention would be to roll this initiative out to employees no later than Friday, and they would have until 4 p.m. on Monday, April 12th, to elect to take this option. And the plan now is to payments would go to employees on or before July 30th, 2021. And as we discussed in the Finance Subcommittee, the school committee will continue to reserve its rights to rescind the offer if funds are not available. So the school committee will always have that ability. And the early retirement incentive will be extended to those employees who have already declared their intention to retire on June 30th, 2021. In most collective bargaining agreements, there is an incentive that if you declare your intention to retire in June by, I believe it's October 1, there is an incentive payment. It varies by collective bargaining group. So if the employee has already done that, we are going to extend this offer to them so that they would get the higher of the two sums, whether that be their normal contractual incentive, or if they qualify for 12 or 13 or 15%, whichever the higher, not both. So they would get the higher of the two. That is the crux of it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Kissel.
I know in the past, and I think I read that once they've agreed to this, I don't know, turning back, we'll call it, except for extenuating circumstances, which...
In this case, I would say that even extend, really, it has to be binding, and we're late enough in the year to
I just know we've chased people that
right.
unfortunately took it, and it was still working in September. So,
and also, it will help us as we flesh out FY22 budget too.
And that's going to be reinforced pretty strongly that
it says
got to make a decision.
It does say in the documents that it is,
Okay.
it is essentially binding, and it is.
Okay. That's good. Thanks.
Dr. Wells?
So, Madam Chair, we had, as you mentioned, we had this extensive discussion at Finance. And so one of the things maybe we want to look at some point after the information's collected is what's the cost savings for the district? And we should really think as a school committee, we're going to go forward with this in the future, what's our, is $1 enough? We a plus $1, is that enough? Or should we have some kind of bar? And maybe every year we can look at that bar and maybe change it a little bit based on increases, but just some guidance for the administration going forward. And that way, I think the committee doesn't have to micromanage this process anymore. So,
Okay.
and maybe after the information's collected, we can look at the total cost savings in finance, one of the regular finance meetings, and then bring it to the full committee and say, here's how much we anticipate saving, and here's our recommendation for a bar going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wells.
Yeah.
Any further questions on the early retirement incentive? Mr. Mulholland?
guessing it's already been voted in favor from the Finance Subcommittee, but if I could, Bob, do you recall how many did this last year? I know you were still the new guy in the block last year.
You still am the new guy.
Okay, you are. You recall, I know we offered it last year because of the situation. How many?
Off the top of my head, Mr. Moran, I think there was maybe a half a dozen, 6 or 7. There weren't many that opted for it.
And how many now that, this buzz is around, how many expressed interest to your office so far, or is it still a guess?
Well, this hasn't been sent out,
Okay.
but from what we understand, there could be the same amount of 5, 6, 7, 8 who are at least interested in pursuing this. Whether they actually will sign up or not is another story.
Right. No, and, to Dr. Crowley's point, if they do it now rather than later, or waiting in the year, then it's your responsibility to fill those slots no matter what. A few more people still have to fill the slots, so, and they get a little bit on the way out the door, so I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Mr. Kissel?
Was the insurance, I know that it was a 90-10, then it went to 75-25, was that school department as well, or just city? Retirements, do you remember that? Is that last year?
You're talking when someone retires, they go on to the Group Insurance Commission.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what that percentage is.
Yeah, I thought there was, because I know a lot of it, like police and fire, I thought they took advantage of retirement early. I didn't know if the school department had it. Well, that had taken effect yet. Okay.
Dr. Wells?
Is this something we could do you know whether we could use like some of these funds that are coming into the school department could be used to offset this payout?
That's a very good question, which Dr. Crowley has asked me. Still looking into that. I haven't seen any prohibition of that, but yet I have not been able to put my hands on any clause or article that says that would be acceptable to use these monies for retirement incentives. So I don't know.
Interesting question. That's a good question. Any further clarifying questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the initiative, and wait the outcome, to make a final decision once all the data's been collected.
Second.
Because essentially, we can rescind it, that's why I'm saying that. So what?
Okay, so, all right, just to be clear, your motion is allowing the administration
To release it.
it.
Gather the data, and then come back
Okay.
to the committee to give a final approval
Sure.
once all the
Okay,
information is in.
so we want to know before we spend.
Yes.
Spend it.
I
Okay,
think that's the way it's written, and that's the
All right.
way it should be done.
okay. Well, there's going to be lots of meetings, so.
It's just be thrown on another meeting.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I have a motion and I have a second. Any,
Just on the motion, I
Sure.
just wanted to ask, make sure that administration, that worked for the timeline, given the rapid turnaround of this.
If I may, the deadline right now is Monday, April 12th. So by 4 p.m. on Monday, April 12th, we'll have an idea of who's going to do it. The next day, we have a school committee meeting. So I presume that I'll bring that analysis back to the very next school committee meeting, which will be one day after the deadline. But it won't be fair to people if they do sign up and want to take this, then they need to know that it's going to happen.
Well, we did give them warning. That's the reason that we said Madam Chairman, that's one of the reasons why we put that language in there,
Yes.
is because, so it's not like we're, sliding something underhanded in this. It's in the document. It says that the school committee has the authority to pull it back if we
yes,
don't think it's financially suitable for the school department.
yes, we can pull it back, we can limit we can do
Right,
first come,
yeah.
first serve. There
Yeah.
are different ways in which the administration can administer this, if you
Well,
will.
where the school committee can.
And the school committee will get final say.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Is that, all right, so we have a motion, good clarifying question. Any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. So the administration will release it and come back to us and report how much it's going to cost-ish and how many teachers have signed up. Right.
And staff.
I'm sorry, and staff. Yes, everybody. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Alcanada, for that presentation.
My pleasure.
And moving on to vote on the last day of school.
So, an exciting time.
There will be a last
And this is
day.
actually a tremendous amount of work, so thank you, Ms. Gray.
I don't know that we ever thought we'd get to this. John?
Well, it took an exceptional amount of time just to create the original schedule because we were like shooting at a moving target. So at the time the original schedule was created, there were things that were put in here that since have learned we do not need it here. But just to go through it quickly with the part that you can see that's red, you can see the 2 snow days, one in December, one in February. They were pulled out of those months, so the number of days students attend are in there. And those days, if you look at June, were added on there. So June will consist of 15 days for students. It'll actually push the actual final day, as it stands now, with no more snow days, to June 21st for students. In the process of this, Juneteenth was a holiday that the state declared at some point last summer. At that time, there was talk that it needed to be recognized on the Friday before. It actually falls on the Saturday. Talking with a lot of colleagues in other districts, everybody was sort of confused as to when it was going to be celebrated, and finally there was confirmation that it will be actually celebrated on Juneteenth. It will not be celebrated on the Friday. So that put that day back into our calendar. But again, the last date for students will be the 21st. The last date for teachers will be the 25th. And the reason for that, if you recall, students only are required to do 170 days this year. Teachers still have to contractually do 182 and a half. So when they only did 9 at the beginning, so to get to 182 and a half, there's 4 days remaining.
So what's the last?
The 21st is the last day for students.
Okay.
And the 25th is the last day for teachers.
All right, so we're changing what's here?
Nope.
24th is the last day for students, he said.
Yeah, it says 24th. the
It's
last
on
day.
here.
No.
Correct.
He said
That
21st.
includes 3 more snow days.
Right, so-
That
So
potentially will not be called.
I think we would be safe to say that
Yeah.
if, I've looked at the forecast.
You are a trained meteorologist.
Yes.
Among other, yeah.
And an epidemiologist and infectious disease control.
Yeah.
So yes, the last day for students that I'm asking you to vote on is the 21st
Okay.
of June.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
So I know, and I can't remember the regulations, but I know several years ago they changed so that the high school, last day of high school had to be within a certain time frame.
Yes.
And we're good with that.
We're good with that.
That works, right?
Yep.
That's a good question, thank you.
Make a motion, we vote on the last day of school being June 21 as indicated by the administration.
I have a motion to approve the last day of school being June 21st. Any discussion on that?
Do we have
I
to
mean,
include the
sorry.
teacher's last day too?
We'll do that in the next one.
Okay.
All right, we'll do one by one. All right.
Second.
This is important stuff.
On the motion?
Yes.
So with removing Juneteenth, did we add back a day?
Yes.
Okay. Because it had been 13, but then we added 2 snow days and it went to 15, but that 13 had already,
All counted out,
beautiful.
day by day, on an actual paper calendar.
I believe that.
Uh-huh.
I did not want to miss a day, lose a day, add a day, I didn't want to damage any of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
No full moon, nothing like that? Just-
All right, so clarifying question. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the last day for teachers?
Motion to approve last day for teachers as June 25th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
The last day for teachers is June 25th, 2021.
What's the snow?
If I may, just briefly, June 6th is the graduation day for the high school, and guidance was released last week, I believe, by the state. At this time, we are planning for an outdoor graduation on June 6th. And so I know Ms. Callahan has already begun that process, but I just publicly wanted to say that that is our plan at this time. That was our plan last year at this time, and then things changed. But I just wanted to That is our intent, is to have as close to traditional graduation as possible.
It's D-Day as well.
Madam Chair, is it always inevitable that the last day, I think I counted correctly, the last day of school is always a Monday, and then people always want, the 21st is a Monday, I think?
Yes,
It
it
is.
is. It isn't always a Monday.
I know, I'm being facetious in the sense that then we'll get feedback, why are they coming back for one day?
Yes.
Because they have to do 170 days.
For the record, my father always made me go on the Monday, whole day.
Oh.
Well, look how we're paid off.
I know. So,
Smart man.
thanks, Dad.
All right.
Thanks, Dad.
All right, I think that concludes that. Moving on to subcommittee reports. Finance, who's reading out my minutes on finance?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, present was Ms. Crowley as the acting chair, Mr. Lipset, and myself as members, Dr. Baldessari, Dr. Crowley, Mr. Alcantara. He Bob.
I'll
I
go
know.
now.
I get through Mr. Baldessari's name like a piece of cake and Patty McClinton. Okay. So we talked about the early incentive retirement. We've already discussed that and approved that. One thing we did talk about in the committee is regarding the collection agency for food lunch debt. As the committee is fully aware, significant effort has been expended regarding reaching out to families, working with families to make sure anybody that can qualify for a reduced meal or free meal is taken care of. But unfortunately, there are still some debts remaining. And so we looked at the debts. Patty, it was about $19,000 in debt outstanding. In order to, the committee discussed this a lot because we understand the times and so forth. And we looked at the debts of individual families. Some are very small, but some are large, and they exceed, $500. And so in looking at the breakdown, we recommend to the full committee that they authorize the administration to work with the agency that's been selected to help recover debts greater than $500 or greater. That rate now affects about 8 families. And so this is in the school committee policy allowing this. And so we'd like the full committee's endorsement of this measure.
Okay, so I have a motion to deviate from our policy.
No,
No, it is.
to follow our policy.
Follow policies, but add in the 500 threshold.
Right, to only
which is a
start,
deviate, yes.
Look at this.
Yeah. So,
I'll wait on the motion.
okay,
On the motion, so that's the motion.
yes, we have a motion.
Second.
Any?
On the motion.
Yes, Mr. Kissel.
If I get it right, so anything under 500, what are we doing with it?
Right now, we're not doing anything. They'll do the continuum things that Patty does in terms of reaching out to the families and so
So
forth.
we're not wiping.
We're not wiping that debt
No.
clean, but we think this is the first time we've done this, and we think it's appropriate to try it on a small group
Yeah.
and see what happens. If maybe there's something we're not seeing, but if we try it on this group here and we get feedback from the administration, then we can decide what to do at a later date.
It's just appropriate to also mention if they fill out a free lunch application, it's
Yep.
wiped.
Yes.
Get it.
And those steps will continue to be taken. If people reach out to the administration that, there's some issue that we're unaware of and work with the administration, then issues can be resolved as we've seen for a number of families. So we always want to reiterate that to anybody that's listening or anybody that has an issue.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you. On the motion, Dr. Wall, you indicated how many families right now at 500 to better?
8 families.
8 families. I see Dr. B over there shaking his head, so obviously they're not eligible for SNAP, and you and Adriana have looked into making sure they're not eligible. Or
We can't file a SNAP application for someone, but we do provide
Added information
provide assistance
pursuing.
in application completion.
Yeah.
And we do actually get grant funding to do that.
All right.
The families that we're speaking of, we've provided tremendous outreach to.
Okay.
Emails, phone calls, offering to make payment plans, offering to have assistance with filling out a SNAP application or our free lunch application if you don't qualify for SNAP. Some people just aren't responding. And in some cases, we have actually made payment plans with families,
Okay.
and then they haven't followed through on the commitment. So it's gotten to a point where we feel as though we've taken every collaborative and compassionate step that we could take. And, we regret to have to do this, but there's no other way for us to recoup those funds.
And if I may mention, to the administration, again, so the agency is going to get used,
Yeah.
and how much of the bite of the apple are they getting, or a commission, or how does
We
that?
paid for a contract with them, and they gave us a certain number of interactions.
Okay.
And we've already paid for that. We have them for a 2-year period. They will expire at some point in 2021. So this would be the appropriate time. And just to say additionally, that we also reach out to our principals and ask us if there's anything that we need to know about the student or the family that maybe the family's not telling us, and to our counselors. In these cases, the instances that were reported to the Finance Committee are instances that have transcended that.
And again, back to the agency they were using,
Yeah.
so they must have a fee. Are they guaranteeing anything to it?
So what happens now is we paid for, I don't know the exact number, Patty, is it 50?
I think it's 50 or 60.
Yeah,
one or the
so
other.
50 or 60 individuals that we can put into a data portal that they have. It's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet-ish, and we put in the information and what is owed, and then they take the steps of them reaching out to the families and saying, you have to pay this, and the types of consequences that one gets for not paying a debt. Once we put the interaction in, that interaction with them goes back and forth until it's closed. So in this case, we have 50. We would have 42 more interactions with other families that we could use. That's the way that system works.
Okay,
They
I think
don't
it's,
charge us. If they recoup the money, they don't charge us anything extra if that's what they're asking.
I think it's great, as you indicated, Dr. B, that, the school department, we've exhausted all our measures at our end, unless there's extenuating circumstances that just appear down the road, so I appreciate it.
The debt was over $70,000, and now it's down to like the final $19,000. And as Dr. Wells said, a lot of those debts are $20 debts. I mean, it's things that we know that people will clear up at some point. But the top half of that page is there are significant dollar amounts.
But if we do these 8 families, that almost reduces that 19,000 in half.
Sure.
And I think we're probably going to send out one letter just before we.
We have.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
set in writing that, if you don't
Right.
correspond with us, that this will be
Right.
referred to.
Okay.
Mr. Kissel?
Just real quick, and I was going to mention that,
Yeah.
it was 70, 75,000, whatever, some higher
Yeah.
number, it's down to that. And this is old debt, I mean, because there's been no charge for,
It's been a year.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say, it's well over a year at least. I was just wondering if that's the case.
Mr. Lipset?
I appreciate all of the efforts that administration has done to get this debt down, all the compassion that you've shown to people who have had this debt. And I will vote in favor. I want to say for the record, and so that it gets into the minutes, that school lunch debt is something that should not exist in our society, that we as a society should be able to feed our children in our schools. And I sincerely hope that the federal government sees its way clear to extending current waivers that pay for school lunches indefinitely, and that if they don't, that potentially our state government steps in to do the same, because we simply should not be in a position to have to send creditors after people for feeding our kids.
Can't agree with you more.
Right. Okay. Any further deliberation on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. With regard to the school lunch program, just a note, you all know that, the federal government is reimbursing us for the lunches served. But you should also be aware there are costs associated with running the lunch program. And currently, right now, we're running a slight deficit. regard to the cost versus the reimbursement from the federal government. There's hope with the students going back to school that money, that increased purchase of lunches and so forth will reduce that deficit, but right now the committee should be aware there's a slight deficit. Our contract with the company probably won't, because it says we can't run a deficit with this program, but it also says we can't have unusual circumstances. And this obviously qualifies, but the committee should just be aware of that.
Thank you, Dr. Wells.
Okay. We talked about the scheduling and logistics for the Finance Subcommittee meeting, which we've already talked about. And we had questions about the list of bills and the balance of accounts. They were answered, so I'll make a motion that the list of bills be approved.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Same action on the balance of accounts.
One abstain. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0, one abstain.
And the meeting ended at 4:20.
Okay,
Thank you for
thank
taking the
you.
minute.
Curriculum and data trends, Mr. Lipset.
We actually have some older minutes from February 11th. We had a
Thank you
couple
for
of
waiting.
issues
Appreciate
on,
that.
other meetings. In attendance, this is from Thursday, February 11th. We met at 3:30 p.m. In this room. In attendance were myself, Mr. Kissel, Ms. Sprague, Ms. Young, and Ms. Gillis. We discussed first some of our proposals and initiatives for district-wide literacy. These have been developed with really extensive staff and stakeholder input with the goal of incorporating a new literacy program, which we've discussed a number of times over the course of the year. Some of this information is at this point over a month old, so forgive me if some of this is now out of date. But our goal currently is to arrive at a recommendation for a new literacy program to incorporate into our curriculum by early May. That's still the case.
It will be sooner than that.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll be looking at several programs, selecting 2 to implement in classrooms as pilots during the month of April. Is that still the case?
Probably not because of the return.
Okay. So that's an ongoing process that I'm sure we'll hear more about shortly.
Absolutely.
Ms. Gillis and Ms. Young also presented their progress towards introducing new literature for all grade levels that reflects a wider diversity of character representation. Ms. Gillis works with staff to identify and vet new titles. We have, I thought, a very extensive preliminary list of new titles, looking at a diversity of characters from that represent a lot of different groups that reflect our students and reflect our school populations, and I thought it was wonderful. Both Ms. Young and Ms. Gillis stress that this list is still growing, that with staff input and with input from programs that do this professionally, we are examining new titles, that staff are working with those titles to determine grade appropriateness and things like that. We did look at some early assessment data for the 2020-2021 school year, which I'm sure is at this point also somewhat out of date. But what we were seeing is that we have made a pretty impressive amount of progress, specifically at the kindergarten level in terms of literacy. Whereas at the start of the academic year, something like 29% of our kindergartners were working below grade level in literacy indicators. By the end of January, that number had decreased to just 3%, and I'm sure that was the number. Those are the numbers that were.
Yeah.
And we've also seen a significant rise in students working above grade level. We did see a fairly significant proportion of students falling below grade level in math and ELA using IXL assessments and other tools, but we had, at least at the time of this writing, seen some recent impressive progress. I don't know what those numbers look like now. I don't know if you want to.
I don't know the specific numbers, but I also just want to state that IXL is a new assessment tool that we've been using, so there's not comparative data to use. We can't compare it to our other benchmark assessments, so it's sort of rough data.
Absolutely. I appreciate you adding that. Thank you. And finally, Ms. Young reported on progress towards a revision of the elementary school report card, again, using a lot of community feedback, staff feedback. The hope at the moment is to begin implementing a pilot in the spring and target the start of next year for full implementation. And we adjourned at 4:27 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Lipset. Personnel?
Have not met, Madam Chair?
On the curriculum,
Oh.
Madam Chairman, I just had one
Of course,
follow-up
with
question.
Dr. Wells, I'm
to the
sorry.
administration.
Of course.
I don't know, when I asked the question about the AP exam, it was a little confusing, the answer to me. It sounded like there was, people had she used the word that they had contracts to take the AP, exam with the teacher. If you could just follow up and,
We'll follow up.
yeah, because it didn't seem what we had approved. And, there may be more things, and she might have just misunderstood. the
Are you
question.
talking about the student representative?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, in my mind, it was a little confusing to me when she said, I thought she was going to say, oh, most of the students agreed to take it, but then she said something about a contract to take it.
I did take all of them.
I think that's what I heard. So
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah, I just want to make sure, we did the thing based on a thing, and that should supersede any
Any of
Other
those.
things.
contract. The student, because.
She did also say that she did hear some students
Yes.
who had talked about who had
Opted
talked
not
about
to.
not doing so,
Correct.
as per what we agreed.
Yeah,
But yes,
yeah. Okay, thank you.
We'll get the information from the administrators.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for curriculum? Okay. Policy and safety, Mr. Kissel?
Yep, April 13th, we will be taking D&B off the table. That's the disposal policy. I did send, I don't know, it's just 2 screenshots for a new mask policy, EBCFA, which is going to be for all grade levels.
Yeah, when the mask policy came out from MASC, we didn't adopt it as school committee policy, we just made it part of our implementation plans. So any regulation change that's taken place is going to trickle down through there. We didn't need to vote this policy.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought. And we did not meet otherwise, is what I was getting at. We'll be touching base on a couple of others here, working on theirs.
We got stuff.
That's stuff.
There's always policy.
Yes.
Always policy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kissel. Resources, Dr. Wells?
No, we have not met yet.
Okay, thank you. SSA, Student Services and Achievement, Cormier?
Yes. Buckle in. We met March 4th, 2021 at the Joyce Middle School. In attendance were myself, Mr. Kissel, Mr. Mulrennan, Dr. Baldessari, and Ms. Ryan. Meeting was called to order at 9:04 a.m. We had a sped update. A lot of this, again, is a little stale. But the tier focus monitoring visit was completed on 3/3. And is that report in?
It is,
By now?
and in both civil rights and in special education, we are fully compliant. We have no corrective action, and that is for the first time in my career that has taken place.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Really?
And Maureen, yeah.
Yeah, if I could just weigh
Please.
in, just briefly, I don't want to gloss over it.
Gratitude.
It's a really significant lack of finding by DESE. So a huge debt
Wow.
of gratitude to Dr. Baldessari for the civil rights and Maureen Ryan for the special ed leadership and coordination. Liz Jolly, Tom Quayle, Jessica Callahan were also part of the visit. But it's a team effort, but to have no findings is really a tribute to the good work that we're doing, the great work that we're doing. And to Dr. Baldessari's comment, it's rare.
Very rare.
That you would have no findings, so.
Is that online? Is it public yet?
No,
No,
but it
okay.
will be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
they send it to us to see if we want to make any changes, to which our answer is no. And, well, we really want some corrective action.
Can you copyright that much?
Yeah,
There's always more to do.
Yeah,
Always room
you
for
guys don't
improvement.
need me. So, no, it's, and it will be, they post it right on the website. As you know, Alan, sometimes parents come in with them.
Yes, that's what we do.
You're not doing this, but
Yeah.
that's not the case anymore, so.
All right, thank you, Dr.
So was that the same
Baldessari.
review group that we had, like, I'm thinking
Yes,
3?
that's
And that was an extensive, I remember that list,
Yes.
and we were working on that for an extensive amount of time, so.
It's exactly right. So it happens, it's a 3-year review process every 6 years.
Our next one is coming in 2.5 years.
Right,
So
so,
we're starting to prepare now.
and so I think at that point, there were like 20 items.
Right,
that we
yeah.
were chipping away
Yeah,
at.
so that's, that's really excellent, I'm shocked.
They were different.
These groups live to write recommendations.
That's exactly right.
Right, so.
All right, so when it gets published, we'll make sure we,
You know,
Got it.
Ms. Bryant, we
Okay.
have to remember when she comes in, to congratulate her on that.
thank you, Dr. Balls,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Okay, Ms. Cormier, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for that
Please.
indulgence.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. As always, the SPED department is working on reorganization and increasing security protocols. For professional development, we have the reading and dyslexia protocols trainings are happening. Bonnie Singer and Brain Frame started on 3-3 with over 300 people on, and Linda Mood Bell trainings at the time were to be scheduled. For the budget, Ms. Ryan mentioned updating a lot of her materials from paper to digital, updating some tech and apps, updating the older generation iPads, out-of-district placements in the coming year, likely to increase due to people postponing because of COVID, and staffing needs continue to exist and in order to remain compliant with Mass and federal laws. This is something that's obviously very important, a priority on her list. There's been a lot of communication with parents, especially at the progress report time of the year. Cohort D's benefits were noted with the high school students. She is continuing the ESY planning and looking ahead to September in order to be in good shape. SSA update, the 2021 Youth Risk Behavior Assessment, which is done every 2 years, was presented by Dr. Baldessari. They added COVID-related questions this year. It's a survey done among middle and high school students. Return to school planning, brainstorming sessions with the counselors and social workers took place earlier this month. SAT for juniors took place today in Woburn. Of course, they were canceled last year, and logistically, that was a bit of a challenge, but sounds like it went well today. Supervised learning centers, as we know, will be closed once schools are reopened, and the staff may be of assistance inside the schools upon reopening. At the time, Julie and Seth Lucas were looking to survey their staff, but I'm guessing this has been moved forward with since then. Summer program survey was sent out regarding a potential partnership with the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, and the Woburn Rec, where normally there's an academic recreation programming, and we're hoping to add to that this year. I don't know if we have the results from that survey.
Yeah, we had an abundance of families requesting full-day recreation and academic programming, over 1,000 responses. The number of people the children that the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club would be able to handle doesn't really even come close to the number that we have in interest. So the YMCA will run Power Scholars as they have in the past, and we're going to work as a district on the summer program.
Excellent. Equity and Access Advisory Council, we're meeting to focus on the development of the council and discussing the tier-focused monitoring. The Prospect Hill Charter School proposed amendment, we just discussed that at the last meeting. English learners in the district, there has been a significant increase over the last few years. We discussed the EL department FY22 budget priorities, including the full-time EL coordinator position and some of the schools that would benefit most from adding positions as we go into budget time. COVID Needs Tracker has 802 entries, averaging 10 family engagement contacts daily, and as well as a house visit. There was the invitation to present at a webinar for 300 attendees on Woburn's model and partnerships with the supervised learning centers with Adriana, right? Yep.
It took place already.
Yeah, I was. Well, you mentioned it because it had taken place, and it was very nice. There was another monthly panel meeting with DESE and the ECC and EOE for family engagement specialists, exploring opportunities to partner with the Street and Main Institute for family engagement initiatives. There was a February vacation program at the supervised learning centers for high-need students. The Boys and Girls Club had over 70 students, cost-free. New students had been added to both Supervised Learning Center and Intervention Academy programs, the 7th grade. We already spoke about lunch debt assistance. The Family Central newsletter was launched with close to 3,000 views, and that garnered new applications for the Supervised Learning Centers and inquiries for SNAP. There was a Portal Plus training that started on March 15th regarding report cards and progress reports as part of LPAC discussions. That was brought up because parents had some questions. There are going to be 4 one-hour sessions in 4 languages running concurrently. And developing family engagement and community partnerships strategic plan for Woburn's family and engagement specialists to align with the WPS overall blueprint, which includes the use of DESI's family engagement self-assessment tool called Fundamentals. CPAC update, they met on March 9th with Rosemary Donovan and Suzanne Carter from the Threshold program at Leslie College. They have an upcoming college fair happening on March 31st at 6 p.m. And the next meeting for CPAC will be April 14th. And school committee members are, as always, invited to attend. In May, they will be inviting the Woburn Disability Board, and in June, inviting Courtney Young as the new Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum. The meeting was adjourned at 10:12 a.m.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cormier. Any questions?
Yep.
Do you have a question, Dr.
I
Wells?
do.
Really? Okay,
Surprise.
just kidding. Go ahead.
I've been quiet this meeting.
You mentioned the at-risk thing. Could we get a copy of that, the other members?
The YRBS?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then did you guys look at trends to see if there were any changes over the past year? I know they've done it for a couple of years.
Yeah, it hasn't been administered yet.
The questions are active.
The
Presentation, we had the.
presentation on it, but the
Yeah.
results
Right.
aren't in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't need the question, I just need the results.
Yeah, that's good data for us.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Wells.
And,
Yeah.
and if I, just
Yep.
because you brought it up,
Yep.
we're doing it as a Middlesex lead.
Yep.
There's a couple different Woburn-specific questions, but largely
Yep.
because we want to see how we compare it to our colleagues
Okay.
in other districts.
Okay. So maybe we could do that as an agenda item?
Yes?
Because I think it's interesting
Oh,
of the
definitely.
entire-
And I should say that it's grant-funded through
Right.
Leahy.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will be next meeting on the 1st at 9 a.m. at the Joyce.
Thank you. That'll help inform our budgeting too. Get the prayer. Okay. That concludes subcommittees. Moving on to,
I had to follow, I had a question about
Sure.
Ms. Young. Did you reach an agreement on her salary? I don't know, you might have sent out an email, but I might have missed it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The answer is yes, we've
Okay.
reached an agreement, and, because she's an intern, she's been, I don't mean to,
Right,
she's been working,
yeah, so she'll continue.
the transition is
Okay,
going
great.
pretty seamless.
Just wanted to make sure everything was moving forward.
okay, no, thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
asking
you.
that, Dr.
Yep.
Wells. Okay. Correspondence. I want to thank Suzanne Fee, who reached out to the school committee as well as the mayor, reminding us that freshman sports are a priority. They were cut from our budget, and I see that Ms. Falconato mentioned them tonight, so I want to thank Ms. Fee for
Make a
contacting
motion,
the school committee.
add that letter, make it part of the permanent record, Madam Chair.
I have a motion.
Second.
Yes, in a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? The motion passes 6-0, one absent. There is going to be a vigil this Friday in Woburn Common at 5:30 p.m. for Asian American Pacific Islanders. It's not a city event, but it's Woburn residents are arranging it. So I just wanted to let the committee know that. Any other correspondence?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms.
I
Mulready.
noticed the other day, Dr. Crowley tweeted out a donation made by Woburn Public Media to the school department. I don't know if you want to speak on that, or maybe just draft a letter of thanks to the Public Media Center. I know they made a donation.
Yeah. So it's, the
I know they're here tonight again doing what they do.
Yes.
A
thank you.
donation was made to help support the live streaming initiative set at the middle and high school. The Woburn Ed Foundation had also made a donation, and so we are appreciative of our partnership with the community. The other, in talking to the Woburn Media Center, the live streaming of athletics really has been a great thing,
Oh.
a silver lining, if you will. That nothing beats, as a parent, being in person watching your child play, no doubt, and I think we're getting there. But that being said, they've been able to really rise to the occasion on weekends to ensure that parents and grandparents that may not even live locally have the access. So deeply appreciative of their work.
Thank you, Dr. Crowley. Thank you, Ms. Mulrennan.
Thank you.
Any other correspondence? Not seeing any. Okay, future agenda items. I have the youth risk survey results when they come in. Maureen Ryan, I think would be a good guest for us. Any other things, you can always just email
Madam
me.
Chairman, you might want to work with the superintendent and schedule particular department heads depending on where the budget's going.
Yes, of course.
You know,
Yes, we'll be doing that. If there's going to be an initiative by this committee for budgeting, we'll certainly have the department heads present. Thank you, Dr. Wells. We don't have executive session, Dr. Crowley?
No.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chair. Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Meeting's adjourned.